Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Monday, January 27th, 2025. I am John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine, and I am importuning you to go to our website at commentary.org. Go to the top line there that you'll see and click on the word newsletter and subscribe to the daily newsletter we are now producing, being written by our own Abe Greenwald. Hundreds, if not thousands of you have already done so in the past week. We're very excited that you are going to have these daily reflections by Abe on matters of interest in the news, as well as links to important articles of interest in our magazine and on our website. So that's commentary.org. Go to the top line, click on newsletter, put in your name, put in your email address, and join this new exciting venture in daily publishing. With me, as always, is the author of that newsletter, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Back after a bout of illness, the winter illness that felled me a couple months ago, senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth. How are you feeling?
Hi, John. Alive. Good to be here.
Alive is good.
Today is the first day of the rest of my life and all that.
That is I'm delighted to hear it. And of course, Washington commentary columnist Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, John. And may I also importune?
Please.
Can I importune?
Yes.
I would like to importune our audience to visit our YouTube page. You know, I go there every day to check on our subscribers, and it's rising, but I have to say the growth rate's slowing a little bit. So you don't have to watch the videos on YouTube. I know many people like to just listen to us. Though if you do watch, you can tell who is speaking at any given moment. But do please subscribe, because that helps boost our reach on the algorithm. And as we know, the algorithm controls all.
This is very true, and I'm delighted that you have brought it up. Very important that you bring it up because, yes, subscribing, liking, all of that is a pathway for us to expose the magazine on the YouTube algorithm to so many people who might really enjoy it. And there you will find yourself in surprising company with people who don't know commentary yet, but can learn about it through this new vehicle. We're very grateful to the people who have subscribed. Costs you nothing to subscribe. Costs you even less to hit like. Or maybe it costs the same, which is zero. So that's actually illogical what I just said. Nonetheless, yes, thank you, Matt, for that importunity.
And you'll be pleasantly surprised because YouTube commenters are like the one nice place left on the web in the commenting sphere. Surprisingly wholesome comment sections on YouTube. So you might actually enjoy it. You might actually enjoy switching over and being a YouTuber in that sense and feel a sense of community.
That is true. And yes, there is for some odd reason, I think, a lack of ugliness. I think maybe because people don't actually hate watch YouTube, really. I think it's too much of a commitment to do that. And so the community of people who are watching are probably relatively like-minded. It's not like responding to a tweet where, you can basically read, 200 words or 108, whatever it is, and then, see a headline and then have a total meltdown and you didn't read the story. You don't even know what it's talking about. So yeah, it's a more civilized and more enthusiastic, I would say. People get very bubbly.
So far.
Upbeat.
Yeah, I know. I don't count on that.
True.
Plenty of people hate me.
I'm sure. Halperin's two-way. If you watch two-way on YouTube, it's maybe it'll be worse.
Well, they have nice, serious conversations on that show, and they bring the two sides together. Whereas we vent our spleen every day, and so maybe it produces a different emotion.
Well, interestingly enough, in the venting our spleen category, so much news has come out in the last week that would require us not to vent our spleen, but to kind of experience a level of relief at the making of policy in Washington, at least from our perspective, that it's a relatively unusual feeling to open the newspaper and see headlines, or open the newspaper, I mean, click on a website or something, and see headlines that don't make you instantly wildly anxious, or that please you because you know they are making wildly anxious a whole lot of people that you don't like and who have had the whip hand in American culture and politics for so long that it is that it's nice to see that the shoe is for once on the other foot. So I don't particularly care about the relations between the government of Colombia and the government of the United States. I am saddened to know that Colombia, which was 15 years ago a very close ally of the United States, is now being ruled by a leftist populist who seems to be going in the wrong direction. I haven't been paying that much attention to these matters until what happened over the weekend, but this peculiar scene yesterday, and I think it was yesterday or maybe Saturday, I can't remember, where these Colombian, essentially drug traffickers, are sent back to Colombia, deported and sent back to Colombia, and that the leader of the country petulantly announces that he will not allow them to land, or he won't let them get off the plane, or something like that.
He turned the flights back.
So yeah, but I mean that's the same thing, right? I mean, he turned the flights back, and so Donald Trump immediately said, "Okay, we're going to basically like declare a trade war on your country," and he was like, "Whoa, don't do that."
Well, in between, he wrote in a very long X post in Spanish, but according to the people who translated this post, it was wacky. It was talking about how he would die for his country and all of these gripes and grievances, and then he folded.
Yeah, but Trump literally, and this is sort of it's indicative of one thing, which is that Trump literally sort of waved his hand, and capitulation came.
Well, it's not a waving of the hand. I mean, typically what would happen is that the State Department or the office of the White House would say, "We're just very disappointed in this.
Yeah,
we're just very disappointed," and then nothing would happen. What Trump does is he goes all out and he uses America's economic leverage, unlike any American president in the modern era. And he did this throughout his first term as well. If you think about when Turkey was holding a Christian pastor, Trump essentially did what he did against Colombia just yesterday. He said, "Okay, if the pastor is now released, I'm going to have a trade war against Turkey. We're going to burden them with tariffs." What happened? The pastor was released. He did this with Mexico during his first term about the Remain in Mexico program.
Yes.
Mexico was resisting it. He said, "Okay, fine. We're going to close the border and we're going to slap all this economic penalty on you." And Remain in Mexico was the program up until Biden ended it when he took office. Right. So Trump uses America's economic leverage in order to obtain these micro objectives in a very successful way. And it's based on, I think, a very important but underscored point, which is that foreign markets need America much more than America needs foreign markets.
Right. Well, the reason I said wave his hand is because this is what America should have in its pocket at all, or should have had in its pocket at all times. That is to say, we are the world's largest economy. We are the world's largest market. I mean, I know the EU is relatively equivalent across whatever that is, 17, 18 countries. We are, we are the engine of the world. And so American soft power isn't just American soft power to attain kind of vague ends like peaceful resolution of differences and freedom for people, or whatever, helping with schooling and all of that. American soft power for the purpose of American interests is to say, don't mess with us. We have many tools aside from like declaring war on you bombing you, or like arresting your ambassador, or doing whatever countries do to express their disgust. We have 1,000 different things that we can do to make sure that you don't behave in ways that are injurious to our national interest. And you're right, Matt, that over the course of the post-war period, because we were the guarantor of world stability and freedom, and we were trying to encourage people not to sort of side with our enemies in the Soviet bloc, and then after that with the sort of the sowers of chaos and malignancy in the world, we believed that our soft power all had to be used for purposes of the greater planetary good, as opposed to the interest of American citizens or the enforcement of American law elsewhere. So if you're talking about this case, right? I mean, I think it's unambiguous. We know that these Colombian drug gangs have managed to make their way into the country. They've made life horrible in all kinds of places and murdered people, and and taken over neighborhoods and all of that. They were rounded up. They were sent home. Like it's an open and shut case. Like, that's deportation is what we do with people who are here illegally, who commit crimes. Now we're even looking at deportation for people who didn't commit crimes just because they're here illegally. But I mean, for 100 years, it's not like when we sent gangsters back to Italy, including, by the way, one of the Real Housewives' husbands, right, from New Jersey, who was born in Italy, was sent back to Italy in the last 10 or 15 years.
That's a stereotype, John.
It happened.
Unfortunately, The Sopranos made people think
okay,
that
fair.
New Jersey,
You're right, but
people from New Jersey are part of the.
I'm sorry, but that's right. But Teresa's husband did it, and he was deported. And I don't remember the Prime Minister of Italy saying, "This plane cannot be allowed to land." Right? So this is not even a. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
On Matt's point about the soft power over the decades has gotten ever softer, to the point where it became a kind of joke when a country would defy us. A U.S. administration would issue a strong denunciation in no uncertain words, and then everyone would joke about those strong denunciations. This was something very, very different. This was immediate action, and it happened so fast. It happened faster than the speed of news.
Right.
By the time Trump had
hours.
waged and won this tariff war, largely carried out as Matt pointed out online, headlines had still not caught up. I was still reading, Colombia pushes back on Trump by the time Colombia had folded.
It was sort of like what happened to me yesterday.
If this had happened under the Biden State Department, the State Department would have said the United States is concerned about the decision of the president of Colombia not to accept the agreed to deportation flight, and then this whole process would begin. And we're just skipping that, and we're going straight to the retaliation.
We're skipping.
We wouldn't have done it in the first place, right? Under Biden. In other words, the action
there's
that
too
taken under Biden, let alone responding to a negative response.
The action would never have happened because the process is more important than the result.
Right.
And also, I think this is also a reminder, another one after the past week, we've had many of them. This is what it is like when you have a president. Because if it has happened under Biden, who knows where he would be? They would have to wake him up. It's unclear which figures around him would actually make the decisions in order to respond. We now have one person, one president, and he's clearly active.
It's
he
so
doesn't
true.
really
And
sleep.
And because of that, there would not only would there be we're disappointed. First, there would be a whole period of obfuscation, because they would say, well, that's not what we're, the press can write whatever they want, but from our end, we understand that they are being cooperative, or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now,
and I think there's two. I mean, I think there's two keys here for countries to remember. The first is that, we talked about the post-war and the Cold War era. And remember, the thing about the Marshall Plan was that it set up an exchange a monetary exchange bank of sorts. The Marshall Plan was set up to boost the American dollar into the stratosphere. And that's where it stayed, right? In other words, you took the loans, you went through the process, but the joining that process was creating the American-led world
Right. It
order.
wasn't just it wasn't
To like,
just
we weren't just throwing
generosity.
people,
Yeah.
a thing to help get them out of the water.
Yeah.
That was first, which is that we understood that this was the type of somebody needed to be a democracy that was going to bestride the earth to stop what had happened from happening before, and the system needed to be set up. So the second is that Trump has a couple of issues that you don't want to mess with him on. And I think that I think that foreign leaders are going to be paying attention because foreign gangs, and any sort of deportation stuff is Trump's wheelhouse, and that's where it's like throwing a fastball right down the middle, right in his zone. I mean, that's where he's looking to hit the ball on immigration and secondarily tariffs. Those are the two spots where he's looking to hit the ball. He shows up and he's waiting for something to come down that lane so he can swing. He's sitting on that pitch. If you're the idiot who throws the first pitch down that lane, he's going to hit the ball very far.
And it is really important to point out that, of course, Colombia doesn't want these guys back. Why would it want these guys back? They're drug traffickers.
Well, John,
and so
the president, though,
he would prefer them. That was like, don't throw me in this briar patch. You know what? I'll drive them up to the Mexican border just to get them out of Colombia. This is fantastic.
It was not
America can keep them.
The president of Colombia seems to be such a wacko. What was his objection? It was that the objection wasn't that the criminals were coming back. It was that they were coming back on a military flight. Yeah. And so he said this was undignified.
Right.
They're murderers.
Right.
why do you want to dignify their return?
So there's another point which I think gets to the behavior of what we expect the Biden State Department to do, as opposed to this kind of Trump going, no. Don't F with us. You'll be screwed by 10 o'clock tonight if you go any further than you're going now. In the Pax Americana, represented by our soft power, in the liberal imagination, there is, and Trump doesn't have this at all, a kind of deep condescension toward the rest of the world. It was Barack Obama's tone, even though a lot of people on the right would look at Barack Obama and say he was sucking up to Muslim countries. He talked about the tradition of zakat, and he wanted to, extend his hand. His first trip was to Cairo. And so you see, it's terrible what he's doing. But if you think about his attitudes toward people who are challenging American dominance or America, including Al-Qaeda at times, and including obviously Iran and all of that, there was this weird, like, patting of the head of other countries that threatened America's position, America's foreign policy interests. Like, you're isn't this cute? You're so cute. We're so big. You're so small. Look, we'll make a deal because, like, you can't hurt us. You can't hurt us, and we'll just help you, and all together we could, because where it's also nice. It's conflict resolution. There's no real problems here. And it is almost like, you're such a nice puppy, you mullahs. You're so cute how you're trying to, like, develop a nuclear way. We'll stop you. Really. We know. Okay. You want some money back? We'll give you some money. Don't worry. And, we're all saying there going, no, take them seriously. What's the matter with you? Like, this is great power. These are countries attempting to become great powers. They are entering into what they think is great power competition. We are a great power. We can't just sit here and not respond in a way that will make sure that it discourages other countries to follow this path. They had it so in their heads somehow, for reasons that I don't really understand. Not only that we never get what we want right, or we screw everything up, so we shouldn't really be aggressive with other countries abroad, but also that there's no threat to us. We can leave Iraq. We can just walk out of Iraq. There's no threat. Look, countries broken, and we did what we had to do, and we shouldn't have done it in the first place, and we're just going to walk away. And then ISIS arises and starts beheading people. No, it's fine. Afghanistan, we've been there 20 years. We can leave.
I would look at it a little bit differently. Okay. I think it's less, patting on the head, though that was clearly the case when he responded to ISIS and called it the JV team, right? But also there was, with Obama, there was a sense that, America kind of has it coming because we're not so special, and we've, have you ever heard of Mossadegh? I mean, that coup in Iran, I mean, that basically means we should just appease the mullahs at all costs, according to President Barack Obama. And that's a little bit different than with Trump, where Trump is just like, and it's the same thing as him personally. If you attack America, he's just going to come at you with a ton of bricks. If you flatter America, well, you're our new best friend. And this is the danger, because Trump is very good at exercising our leverage over countries that we typically consider allies. So Colombia, man, they got hit. They don't even know what happened. And Colombia reversed course. Think about what's happening at the same time with Denmark and Greenland. Trump had, before the inauguration, what we understand to be a very testy call with the Prime Minister of Denmark. Over the weekend, again, while he was in Las Vegas, he brought up the fact that American territory will be expanding under his second term, and that Greenland is prime real estate. That's where we're aiming. And he refuses to rule out military force against Denmark. What we want to see, though, is we want to see him use that same sense of purpose and belligerence against American enemies like Russia and China and Iran and North Korea. But those enemies are very good at figuring out, hey, if we say nice things, then maybe Trump will back off a little bit. I just wish our allies would recognize that same method. You're muted, John.
Sorry, I do think that you've hit on the crux of the matter, which is that Trump is willing to do things that in foreign policy in particular, that almost no one, Reagan a little bit, maybe first Bush a little bit, but almost no one was willing to do in the post-war period. And so it's a shock to the system. It's a shock to the system to have America say, America is not going to tolerate being treated this way. We're not going to, and we're going to use our power to make sure that you don't do this, or that you're really sorry if you do this, and let this be a lesson to everybody else. And one of the reasons I say that there is a kind of condescension is when you say, let's say you're a parent and you're upset because you think your kid is a bully, right? Your kid's a bully, and you're like, my kid's a bully, and I'm sorry, I'm going to make my kid go apologize and civilize my kid. So Obama's like, America's a bully. He doesn't mean that he's a bully. He means America's a bully. His prior presidents were bullies, and they were conducting this foreign policy, the bullying, and it's so terrible. Part of what he's doing there is saying, well, my kid has nothing to fear from anybody else anyway. I have nothing to fear. We're not in danger. We're never in danger. And, the whole logic of what his efforts, Obama's efforts after he became president in relation to terrorism, were a kind of implicit acknowledgement of the idea that 9/11 was a lucky shot. It was a lucky thing. They got one off. they got one off, and you know what we did? We went to war in these two countries, and we blood and treasure, and that was stupid. I mean, never said Afghanistan was stupid, but you know, he thought Afghanistan was probably reasonably stupid, at least by the time he got into office. And it's like, you know, what we need to is to restrain ourselves, because, you know, if we don't let our kid, I love our kid, he's, you know, it's fun, but you know, we kind of gotta learn, teach them how to have some self-restraint. And you only say that if you think your kid isn't then going to be like killed by a couple of other kids on the playground. You know, you need to be relatively assured that your kid was in the wrong and deserved to get whatever he wanted to get. And there is about this a willful blindness to what the rest of the world is really like, and a peculiar parochialism,
Well, that's what
as
happened
though
with
everybody's
Israel.
like the United States, as opposed to the fact that there are a lot of people who don't actually have anything against murdering another, you know, 500,000 people in another tribe because they have issues over water rights.
Well,
That's
that's
what
what
most of
everybody
the
was
world is
saying,
like and
and
has
after
been
October
like.
7th, right? It was like, I'm so sad to see our friends in Israel make the same mistakes that we made in Iraq, right? We heard that 1,000 times, or we made the same mistakes after 9/11. Biden said it too. It was
Yeah.
this idea that you let emotion run away with you. And it was like, I'm sorry, that's not convincing. And Israel wasn't convinced by the, hey, don't be mad, you know, maybe take some time away at a yoga retreat and see how you feel. And if you're still angry, have a beer summit or whatever. Like, that's not how the world works, and we like to pretend it is sometimes. But no, a war broke out. It was a devastating war, and that's what happens in the world when you invade another country and all that. And also when you have, again, when you have the threats next door, as opposed to America sometimes gets this sleepiness about it because we have the oceans in between and stuff like that. But that was we have a tendency to preach that too, to try to export this, this like weird Zen religion of, and our power, first of all, is not replicated elsewhere. If somebody comes here to America looking for trouble, they will find trouble. And that is a rare thing that happens. But when it does, you have to acknowledge that it happened, right? That was 9/11. It wasn't like, well, usually they don't hit the towers, but sometimes somebody comes in and and is looking for trouble, and you have to give them trouble back. And the rest of the world has a much shorter trigger finger when it comes to that, in part because they're often lined up next to each other, right? Russia and Ukraine was they didn't have to go very far. India and Pakistan sit on that board. Like, a lot of these trouble zones are sitting tinderboxes, and you can't afford to sit back and go, well, I don't know how powerful they are, because the second you do, Hamas finds a way
Yeah.
to roll in and do something that hasn't been done to the Jews since the Holocaust, right? This is how most of the world lives, on that sort of knife's edge, where if you fall asleep, very, very bad things happen right away.
I
Right.
think
And
the liberal mindset we're talking about here, which is this not recognizing the fragility of American well-being, also accounts for why they are so comfortable experimenting with what we are and what we have, right? Because we're
here,
fine.
domestically, you
Yeah,
mean in terms of
yeah,
our own lives
right,
in the
right.
United
Because
States?
everything's fine. We're fine. We can survive this. We can survive that. We're too big. We're too, we're too safe. We can mess around with everything. Yeah.
You mean like the
Well, it's true.
social
It's a
engineering
classic.
stuff?
What's
No,
that?
but
You
all
mean like the
social
social
engineering
engineering
stuff is
stuff,
based
Yes.
on
Yeah.
that. Yeah, or
Right.
taxation, for
Anything.
example, is a very good example. It's like, sure, you can pay. Sure, the rich can pay more. Okay, sure, yes, the rich can pay more. Will there be consequences? Like, things have reaction. Like, it's like nothing is unconnected. The rich pay more in taxes. There's going to be less money circulating in the private economy. Is that good or bad? Well, maybe you think that what's more important is for the federal government to have more money to do more collective projects, or what they believe to be collective projects. Or you can think, well, but if you do that, you just have to understand that there are going to be consequential results in terms of what might happen in the private sector. And that's where people go, no, 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 no. That's don't even go there. That's so silly. We're so big. Rich have too much money anyway. And that's the whole point of it. And, having serious conversations about how if you do this, that will happen. In the end, what Trump did, why the Colombia thing is important, and I think unambiguously valuable, even though it was a total gimme. Like, he didn't know they were going to do this, right? He didn't know they were going to reject. They were going to not let the planes land or whatever. It's deterrence. Like, the entire structure of American foreign policy after World War II, because we did not want to engage the Soviets directly, was deterrence. It was, we're going to try to raise the cost of your doing things that we think are disruptive to us or disruptive to the planet, so that you'll think twice or three or four times before you even attempt them. And
it's the
right?
best
That's
thing.
And so, yeah, go
that
ahead.
could have. It's the best thing that could have happened to Trump under the circumstances, because
Well,
it gave
Trump,
him
but
an
also to the
opportunity
also US
to
interests.
to give an example, to demonstrate what would happen
Yeah.
if he's defied. And it lifted the hopes of the Trump detractors. They're like, oh, the Colombia's pushing back. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. And before they could even update their headlines, it was resolved and made an example for the rest of the planet.
I mean, it all happened so quickly. One wonders whether anyone will remember the U.S.-Colombia conflict by this coming Wednesday.
Well, okay, no one in this country will remember it, but the foreign ministries of countries that have to deal with the United States will remember it.
Especially on immigration stuff, especially on his, there's a couple of sensitive issues that you don't, he's supposed to have something of a honeymoon, so to speak. He just gets into office. You don't just go poking the American bear sort of, there has to be that feeling that you don't want to be the first guy to walk up and slap the president and see what happens. And this is what happens. And if this isn't what had happened, it would have opened the floodgates, right? I mean, he had to respond this way. He had to.
Okay. But the point is, I don't know that he is going to face comparable challenges from other countries in the next several months.
Why don't we talk about the
United States isn't going to?
Why don't we talk about another theater, the Middle East, where a lot also happened over the weekend, and where there will be, I think, challenges, certainly. So we had the release of 4 hostages this weekend. We had a moment where the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza and Hamas seemed to be on the verge of collapse when Hamas would not provide details about another hostage scheduled for release, and Israel prevented Gazans from returning to the north of the Gaza Strip. That was resolved. There too, Israel stood firm, and Hamas caved and provided information not only about the captive in question, but 2 others who will be released in midweek. And Israel relaxed and allowed Palestinians to return to the north of the Strip. Meanwhile, there was an operation in the West Bank, IDF going after terrorists in Jenin. And then in the northern sector, the ceasefire agreement was extended for another 3 weeks because, as everyone...
With Hezbollah, right.
With Hezbollah and Lebanon, because as everyone on this podcast expected, the Lebanese army has completely failed to secure its territory. And in fact, there are signs that at least parts of the Lebanese army are working with Hezbollah. So if you want to look at a region that's going to continue to give Trump challenges, I think the Middle East will be one of them, even though the policy that he agreed to, this ceasefire, which came about as a result of his personal intervention, continues to hold.
He also,
sorry,
I just want to say on this very thing, Trump urged Arab countries to take in Palestinian refugees if they care so much.
Of course, sorry, I forgot that.
And he reestablished the flow of 2,000-pound bombs.
Yes, that's another
to Israel.
A lot happening.
Yeah, and when asked why,
and said,
he said because they bought them.
Would be good. Yeah, would be really good would be if the population of Gaza just like went away for a year, and then we had a nice big construction project, let's make Gaza great again. I mean, look at that beachfront. It's beautiful. Let's everyone leave, and then we'll just, we'll rebuild. Now, that's of course ridiculous. No one is going to take 2 million Gazans, and they would be terrified to, and all of that. They're there because no one would ever take them. But the point is, like, he is willing to sort of think about things in a frame that is not, and I mean this both in a good way and a bad way, like, is not, well, you can't do that because that's just not realistic.
Right. Or maybe
it's
he
like,
does it.
Why can't we just raise the question?
There are millions of Ukrainian refugees throughout Europe.
Yes.
What he's doing with that comment is exposing the fact that the Palestinians, especially the Gazans, are treated extremely. No, it's not that they don't have allies. If you look at the response by the Egyptian foreign minister, he said there was no way we would accept any Gazans because to do so would end the Palestinian cause.
Right.
The Egypt and Jordan have always understood the Palestinians to be leverage over Israel. And they continue to view Gaza as leverage over Israel, even though the terrorist mafia that runs Gaza has led to untold destruction of their own people, as well as the murder of so many Jews.
Right. Well, Jordan
it's disgusting what Egypt and Syria and Jordan
it's totally
are doing.
Disgusting, but of course they're also disingenuous.
Yeah.
They do not want these people in their country.
I mean, Jordan is majority Palestinian already, right? So they see trouble brewing. Yeah. So
yeah. But look, here's the point, which is yes, they want they want to support the Palestinian cause by having Palestinians live in Palestine, or what they deem to be Palestine. But they don't mean it. What they mean is, I don't want them. You take it. That's why they're there. They've been there for 75 years. They're staying. I don't need this restive population of suicide, that basically creates and inculcates suicide bombers and monsters and murderers on my soil to disrupt. We just had to, 12 years ago, we had to overthrow our government and bring in a military dictatorship into Egypt in order to save us from people like this who were running our government in Cairo.
Hamas is a splinter group of the Muslim Brotherhood originally, which was all about getting Egypt. But I think it's also that they wonder. I mean, you're right, because after 1967, Israel was like, all right, let's talk about you taking Gaza back, and Egypt was like, what, are you kidding me? This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And Jordan had laid claim to the West Bank and then officially renounced its claim to the territory it had lost in the war. It just said, it's not our problem. Literally, the territory it had been holding. It's unprecedented to see anything like this. But the other thing I wanted to say is just that I think the other thing with Trump is that people believe he might just be crazy enough to do it. It's not just, or to try it. It's not just that he won't talk about these things. I remember 20 years ago covering a speech by Bill Clinton in which he talked about how sad it was that the beaches of Gaza, it could be Singapore, this place could be the richest country, it could be like a giant, it could be like Beirut was back in the good old days or whatever, and all oceanfront, and Israel would be happy and they would be happy and everybody would be rich. American presidents saw this and were like, what are you doing? But nobody thought that Bill Clinton would then, would go the next step and say, why don't we move everybody out to, the Sinai Desert for a bit, and let's build those hotels ourselves, right? And I think that there's some inkling of, what if he's willing to do it with Trump? Like, what if he's just crazy enough to try? And that's why Egypt was like, absolutely not. Yeah. Don't even bring it up. So I think that some of the threat is that is Trump personally is the crazy man theory of, foreign affairs, the Nixonian thing that does sometimes get people.
The point is that there's a certain potential for policy creativity here that Trump represents in his
Yeah.
chaos. I remember a leading American rich guy saying to me at the beginning of 2017, there might be opportunities in this chaos. I don't think in the end that Trump really, with the exception of the Abraham Accords, that Trump actually managed to do that, cutting of the Gordian knot of a policy that was completely stagnant. But, it was like, well,
killing Soleimani shook things up.
Well, that's true. Although you could see somebody else killing Soleimani. I mean, you could see there were you could in Obama wasn't against droning.
Obama would never have droned Soleimani in a million years.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Anyway, no, but right. I'm not saying that there weren't, but that he got so tied up and twisted in knots in his own way that
it started with the embassy, right? It started with moving the embassy.
Yeah, right.
That was was the key to show that he would not be like the previous post-Cold War presidents.
Now, I also want to talk about the difference here in the way that American liberals think about what is going on in Israel. And again, this bizarre way in which they do seem to think that Israel is Rhode Island, but with a lot of Jews, and there's a terrorist state on the border. A big story in the New York Times, okay? The headline of the story, where did it go? It just disappeared on me. Here's it. Israeli army raids home of freed Hamas member amid tensions over hostage deal. Soldiers disrupted a Jerusalem gathering to mark the early release of an imprisoned Palestinian, arresting his brother and roughing up his father. A Times reporter conducting interviews was also assaulted. Okay. So the story is there was a party in East Jerusalem for the release from prison of Ashraf Zugair. At his father's house. Ashraf Zugair was arrested for being like the driver to driving people to terrorist attacks in Jerusalem in 2002. So he's been in jail. And there was a party, and the army showed up and said, there are no parties on Israeli territory in favor of Hamas releases. There will be no gatherings celebrating the release of an enemy of Israel who was released as part of this hostage deal. Hamas is our enemy. You are on Israeli soil. You stop or you're going to be arrested. And they got arrested. And then this very leftist 972 magazine stringer for the New York Times shows up and says, I'm an American. And they're like, I don't care that you're an American or a journalist. Get out of our way. Beat it, you little shrimp, is basically what they said. It's like, we're in the middle of a military operation here. So, basically, they sort of pushed him or something like that. Now, my point here is, imagine this. Nazi is released and there's a big party and America doesn't do anything about the part. I mean, in Brooklyn, a member of Al-Qaeda's family has a big party for everybody in the neighborhood to celebrate, the release of bin Laden. I mean, and the Times, and you're going to hear about this all week. Watch. Israelis roughing up a reporter, an American Israeli reporter. I mean, it's crazy. And how terrible. Israel is still at war with Hamas. There's a ceasefire. There is a war. They are going into the West Bank to kill Hamas members who are in the West Bank, ready to act and move on the Palestinian Authority. The ceasefire is in Gaza, physically, is in the territory of Gaza. If there is a Hamas person living in New Caledonia off the shore of New Zealand, Israel can go there, given the sensitivities with New Caledonia, and kill that guy. He is a member of Hamas. Israel is at war with Hamas. All combatants in the war are, I was going to say fair game, that's not the right term, are just targets.
And Hamas is at war with Israel.
Right.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
One can't escape the conclusion looking at these disgusting displays that Hamas engages in every time they
making the girls appear at a rally.
Another round of hostages.
In Hamas uniform.
The statements from Hamas leaders saying that we're already planning the next attack and we're already raising the next cadre of terrorists. Now, I actually look upon those statements with some incredulity. I believe that Hamas is playing a propaganda game here and has been severely debilitated by Israel's campaign. However, there's no mistaking it. They still want to kill Jews and end Israel, and they view this ceasefire as a temporary respite in between acts of war. This has been the goal since the founding of Israel in 1948. And especially I think it's important for people within the American government to realize that Hamas and Islamists operate on a very different timeline than Westerners. They don't think in terms of the news cycle. They think in terms literally of centuries and what they're trying to do. And so it's entirely incumbent on Israel to keep up the pressure, to enforce the agreement. And then when somebody is released who's not having to, there's no reason to cater to these ridiculous people, like you're saying, John.
It's not catering. This is literally this is on Israeli territory. This is on sovereign Israeli land in East Jerusalem. I'm sorry, you can't have a party that is an organizing effort to get people to do exactly what they're trying to do, which is reconstitute Hamas. They're sitting there at the party. They give maybe somebody will get into a uniform and try to kill people, kill Jews on the West Bank.
It's a terror rally.
Joke. Yeah, it was a terror rally.
That's what it was.
Somebody's home. And I also want to point out, not that I want to spend too much time on the New York Times. It's just indicative of the way in which Trump and his people better continue to remain as disgusted by the fake news mainstream media as they have been so far, because there are signs inside his coalition that people might be tempted to use this kind of propaganda to help their own interests, which I'll get to in a second. This is the headline this morning. Live updates, quote, Gazans make long trek home as ceasefire holds. Now, the long trek home is Gazans are being allowed to move from the south back to the north of Gaza on foot because they can't use vehicles. They don't want them to use vehicles for obvious reasons. This trek is about 15 miles at most. Okay, it's a long walk. I'm not saying it's not a long walk. The long trek is like walking 1,000 miles. That's a long trek.
You want a long trek? Let me tell you about some 40 years in that desert.
Yeah, or like if you're touring if you're going on a nice long hike in Yosemite, you might walk 14 miles. The long trek. It's the long trek home. They're returning the long trek. The sweat, it's a long trek. The Hajj is a long trek. That's like 1,000 miles down through the Levant to get to Mecca. That's a long trek. 15 miles. Like I'm not a athletic person. I walked 15 miles 3 weeks ago in Italy, in one day, because I was on vacation. So this is how the New York Times is now casting this as though the exiles are returning from Rafah, from the area around Rafah to the area around Jabalia. It's like, are you kidding me? That's like I understand people. It's like people here don't have to do this, but that's like going from the middle of Washington, D.C. to Fairfax City Hall, or, I don't know, Cheverly, Maryland post office. It's insane. It's an insane way of framing it, and it's being framed deliberately to create this kind of romanticized idea about a suffering population going back to where where they're going to find only rubble. They're only going to find rubble. Now, can I just say one last thing? Lily Albag, one of the hostages who was released, said to her father, "They're all terrorists. Everyone in Gaza is a terrorist. You don't know everybody, from the children to everybody. anyone I saw in these 16 months cursed at me, called me names, said horrible things about Jews. They're all terrorists. Now, I'm not saying they're all terrorists, but I'm saying that this is a diseased, evil culture that they live in. And the idea that I am supposed to feel a smidgen's worth of sympathy for them is belied by everything that I've been seeing in the last 48 to 72 hours. And you want to call me a monster? I don't care about them. I don't care that they're living in rubble. I don't care that they don't have electricity. I don't care. They want to kill me and my family and my people. And they all believe this. Hamas remains popular in Gaza. And so, it's them or me. It's, then that's the way it's going to be.
I have a tiny comment. Our favorite morning news program had a piece about the Gazans returning to their homes in the north.
Yes, they did.
They described the phrase Palestinian joy, the joy that they feel.
The first joy that,
this
the reporter has.
This rubs me the wrong way because when did joy become the hot word? When did that become the go-to emotion? It seems like it's only in the past year, maybe 2 years. I've been thinking about this I've been thinking about it during the weekend, and then it came up in the morning. I think I blame David Brooks, because in David Brooks' book, The Second Mountain, he opens up with a whole chapter on joy, and somehow that maybe that was I don't know, but let's just stop the joy. Let's just stop the joy. Let's go to another emotion, satisfaction. Please, I'm pleased. Just no more joy, please.
Okay, cautious joy, optimism, contentment.
Yeah. Listen, joy as a word in the English language really is a result of the translation, the King James translation of Psalm 30. People. This is the song. It's the dedication of the temple psalm, and this is the one that literally reads this: "I will exalt you, Lord, for you lifted me out of the depths, did not let my enemies gloat over me. I called to you for help, and you healed me. You brought me up from the realm of the dead. You spared me from going down to the pit." Weeping, sing the praises of the Lord, praise his holy name. His anger lasts only a moment. His favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may be in the night, but joy comes in the morning.
Joy comes in the morning, right.
Joy comes in the morning.
Yes.
That's because of the dedication of the temple. So you want to know what joy is? Joy is the dedication of the temple to the Lord of the Hebrews. Right. It's not for the installation of the cool-like installation of a fake McDonald's employee, and it is not for people returning home to their despoiled places that were ruined because they were supporters of a monstrous regime that killed and injured the equivalent of 23,000 Americans in 7 hours. So
it's cultural appropriation.
Enjoy your joy.
Joy is ours.
Why don't you build a Jewish temple, and then you can have some Palestinian joy. All right, let's move on to Trump's other part of the weekend. Got Pete Hegseth confirmed. The interesting no vote of Mitch McConnell, who is clearly going to spend his last 2 years in office as a kind of representative of the old Republican establishment, expressing both what it will support and what it will oppose in Trump's presidency, because he is the honey badger. He was the honey badger toward the Democrats, and now he's going to be the honey badger toward Trump. He's got nothing to fear from Trump any longer, and so he is just going to do whatever it is that he's going to do. So J.D. Vance had to break after Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski announced there were no votes against Hegseth, and McConnell was the third. It was a 50-50 tie. Vance broke the tie. Hegseth is now the Secretary of Defense.
Procedurally, he would not have done that had it sunk
Vance
the nomination.
Had Vance not been there.
Right. McConnell is a
that's
procedural guy.
Symbolic.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. It's symbolic.
The honey. I'm
he
just
is
saying the honey badger thing has certain limits, even for McConnell, because he's
okay.
not going to.
We think right.
McCain
Yeah,
was,
I mean,
John McCain was. He was the one who gave the thumbs down to the
Yeah, yeah.
Obamacare
well,
repeal on the floor. Surprise. McConnell is going to be a bit less of a honey
I
badger
mean,
in that sense.
we'll see. I mean, do we have Tulsi Gabbard's hearing coming up this week?
Yeah.
And
And RFKs.
and RFKs, but I would expect on Gabbard in particular, McConnell will have similar reservations. I do want to say one thing about the statement that McConnell issued after his no vote on Hegseth, because I think it's worth noticing. In there, he made a great deal about Hegseth's lack of experience in running an organization the size of the Pentagon. That's a fair point. But then he said, considering all the challenges we face, we need someone of the stature and of the experience and of the kind of credibility of a George Marshall or of a Kat Weinberger. And I was thinking about that after reading the statement, and a couple of reactions came to me. The first is, we have no one like that anymore. There is no one like that. And secondly,
that's why we kept appointing generals. That's why
right.
everybody kept appointing generals.
But that leads to my second reaction, which is that
yeah.
the people who have attained the credibility and experience are the same people who have gotten us into this mess. So in a way, my reaction to McConnell's statement was to say, well, actually, you're making the case for Hegseth, because whatever you can say about Hegseth, it is that he is a completely new character, and also he's very young. So in a way, McConnell's arguing for age and experience when the record of American foreign policy over the last 10, 15 years is that age and experience have only made our problems worse. Right? Biden was the oldest and most experienced president in our history, and I happen to think he was the worst president of my lifetime.
Yeah, it turns into stagnation.
Yeah. So, I actually think that weirdly, McConnell made a backhanded case for Hegseth, even while voting no.
Then Trump took off for the day that night is when Hegseth was confirmed, Friday. He was in North Carolina, and then he went to California, and again did things that we've never really seen before. And I don't know how you can think that what he did was shocking or inappropriate. It was very combative, right? So in North Carolina, he sat there with people whose homes had been destroyed, who were having trouble with insurance companies paying out their insurance, and he had them kind of name and shame the insurance companies on national television. So he was then serving as like one of those local reporters, you go to when it's like, I bought a plane ticket, and when I showed up at the airport, they canceled my flight and they won't refund my ticket. And then, they get named, and then Irv gets results. Irv calls the airline for you and gets your money back. So we can assume that those people at least are going to get a restitution in some form from their insurance companies. And then in LA, he sat there with Karen Bass, with Brad Sherman, congressman from LA, and saw Newsom and saw Adam Schiff. And basically, again, without condescension, or he kind of lowered himself to their level, right? He's the president. They're all just local politicians. And he was just like, you guys did a terrible job. Like, what's the matter with you? Is this the way you run things? Kind of amazing. Ordinarily it would be the president would be like, and we're working with local officials, FEMA. He says he's shutting down FEMA. FEMA stinks. We're going to shut FEMA down. He's like, we're going to work with the local officials, and we have a very good relationship with, the mayor. I mean, we have many differences ideologically, but when it comes to trying to do things for the suffering people of Los Angeles, whereas of one mind, he's like, no, you stink. You're lousy. You were in Ghana. What's the matter with you?
Well, and he seems to have had the better of the argument. The real exchange was over whether the victims of the wildfires can go to their properties and clear the debris themselves. And Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, was saying, "Well, they can do that. They can do that." And Trump said, "No,
No, they can't.
I'm talking to these people, and they're saying that they need a permit, and that everyone I'm talking to says the permit will take 18 months, and that's just too long." And so I think he brought his combative style there and used it more effectively than he clearly did during his first term, when, of course, the famous visit to Puerto Rico where he was tossing the paper towels to the crowd. I found it amusing at the time. I know many people did not, but this was a very different type of visit that Trump gave, and another reminder at how different Trump 2 is from Trump 1. I've been ruminating over just the shock of Trump 1. That no one expected Donald Trump to be the president of the United States when he won in 2016. And then going into office in 2017, he was the first president in our history to have no government or military experience. So he really did not know anything about this job. Well, this time, 8 years later, a lot of people did expect him to win, right? I mean, he had a consistent, small but consistent lead almost throughout the entire campaign.
We all know that he has small and consistent lead. It's astounding how few people,
that's
even
true,
as the Real Clear Politics average had him winning from
they
March until November. They couldn't conceive it.
But the reaction was less manic this time than it was 8 years ago. And on top of this, he knows a lot more about the job. And the people around him know a lot more about how the government works than they did 8 years ago.
And I think, if you take these moves, we started off with what he did with Colombia. Now you're talking about how he handled these disaster areas. The Trump, there's no resistance anymore. The Trump detractors are going to be in for a shock if they keep an eye on his approval ratings. These are popular things. He is not doing things that people object to. These are the kinds of things that make people say, thank God this isn't Biden. Or thank God this isn't Trump.
I think one of the things that's
mentioning, Seth, let me just, because
sure.
we're running short, but I promised I was going to mention this. And I do want to issue a warning or a proviso to him and to everybody who is one of his fans, particularly if you are a supporter of Israel or you're concerned about things. There are some bad emanations coming from Trump quarters about the ceasefire in Gaza. And what I'm referring to is his negotiator, Steve Witkoff, who went last night to the dedication of a new synagogue in New York City called the Altanoia Synagogue, and said that he was concerned, he's very excited. He's excited that the hostages are coming out, and cried with the hostages, and it's so moving, and we need to get the dead out so that, their parents can bury them and say Kaddish, and that's very important. And he is concerned that, in the course of all this, there may be flare-ups, and there could be a flare-up, and he's going to do what he can to make sure that there aren't flare-ups. And the reason I'm bringing this up this way is that he didn't mean that, there would be like one incident where the ceasefire would be violated and there would be a flare-up and then they could. He, I believe, implicitly means that he does not want to see a resumption of the hostilities, the open warfare between Israel and Hamas. And if that is the case, there is Israel and the administration, if he is speaking for the administration and not just for himself because he's protecting his deal, they're in for a very, very serious conflict, because this war is going to resume one way or another. And it can resume with America's support, or it can resume with America's and Trump's hostile opposition. But the number of people in Israel who want the war to be won to a successful and unambiguous conclusion vastly outnumber the number of people who want it to be ended with this irresolution. And all we can hope now is that the 98, or whatever the number now is remaining, 90, I guess, is now the remaining number, living and dead, get out during this 6-week period before hostilities resume. And obviously Hamas's interest is in doing what it can to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that they can somehow claim some kind of victory from the jaws of defeat. And the question is the Trump administration, through the vehicle of this guy, Steve Witkoff, are they going to participate in that effort by Hamas implicitly, even though they don't want to? I don't know, but it's not a lead pipe cinch that this is that Trump is going to have Israel's back here. Witkoff is signaling that the deal is what's important, and that the phase 2 is what's important. And even though he supposedly promised Bibi that America would not object to a restarting of the war should circumstances warrant that, I heard this last night, and I do not think it is a good sign.
We'll see.
We'll see. I'm going to make a quick recommendation, 30 seconds. Amazon debuted this last week a new 30-minute police procedural called On Call, which is set in Long Beach, California, and it is literally about two cops in a car. I mean, it begins with the shooting of a cop by a gangbanger, but it's basically about a veteran cop played by Troyan Belisario, and a young cop whose first day on the job it is, in a car. And she's teaching him the ropes of how to be a cop. And the first episode, directed, interestingly enough, by Eric LaSalle, who was in the original cast of ER, is spectacularly good. And it's 30 minutes long. It's a 30-minute long cop drama. Like, not since I was a kid and Adam 12 and Dragnet were on TV have we had a 30-minute cop drama. It's like thrilling. It's thrilling 30-minute cop drama. Anyway, that's On Call on Amazon. So that's our recommendation for the day. So we'll be back tomorrow. For Seth, Abe, and Matt, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.